I never thought my family would turn into strangers. But that's what they became, slowly and almost imperceptibly, until the message that shattered everything came, wrapped in digital indifference. It was December 23rd. I remember the chill in the air and the faint scent of cinnamon from the potpourri bowl I'd refreshed that morning. I was dusting the bookshelf in the living room, carefully wiping down the framed photograph from 2 years ago. Our last Christmas all together. Arthur, my son, had his arm around me. Tamil, my husband of 41 years, was standing just behind us, his hands on my shoulders, smiling. And then there was Taya, my daughter-in-law, standing to the side with her familiar tight smile, holding her phone as if she'd rather be anywhere else at the time. I dismissed the expression as stress. She was always fussing over Arthur's work schedule, her migraines, her phone constantly buzzing with calls from clients she never named. My phone buzzed, then a crisp ping from Taya, which was odd. She rarely texted me directly. I opened it, expecting maybe an update about when they'd arrive. Maybe they'd ask me to pick up something last minute. I had their favorite foods stocked in the fridge, gifts wrapped under the tree, the guest rooms aired out, and the fireplace ready to go. But the message I read didn't ask about dinner or flight times. Instead, it said, "Oh, we forgot to tell you. We went to Italy. Just me, your husband, and your son. Only those who truly feel like family to me. Merry Christmas." I remember staring at the message for so long the screen dimmed. I turned the phone off and on again, thinking it was a mistake. Maybe she sent it to the wrong person. Maybe it was sarcasm. But the longer I looked, the more I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was intentional, cruel, precise. A knife slipped between my ribs, twisted by someone who had spent years sharpening it. I reread it again and again. Only those who truly feel like family to me. I sat on the edge of the couch, heart hammering. My fingers felt like ice. Tamil had left with them. Arthur, too? They hadn't mentioned Italy. Not once. Not during our last call. Not during the dinner we'd had a few weeks ago, where I had felt something in the air, something tense and quiet, like an unspoken plan being rehearsed behind my back. I placed the phone beside me and stared at the blinking lights of the Christmas tree. My whole life, I'd been the one making holidays happen. I did everything, every meal, every decoration, every small tradition. And now, without warning, they had left me behind as if I was an afterthought, a guest who had overstayed her welcome. But this wasn't sudden. It only felt sudden. The signs had been there for months. It started small in September. I had mentioned wanting to host Thanksgiving again this year, and Taya gave me a polite smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "Let's play it by ear." That wasn't unusual on its own. But when I followed up weeks later, she told me Arthur had too much work and Tamil had been feeling off, and they might just stay local this time. I offered to go to them. She said the house was a bit of a mess. Thanksgiving came and went. I ate a reheated chicken breast and mashed potatoes alone. When I called, no one picked up. Later that evening, she posted a picture of a roasted turkey, the caption reading, "Grateful for the ones who matter most." Arthur didn't call that night. Neither did Tamil. Then came the distance. Tamil began spending more time with Arthur at the office. He said Arthur needed help managing the books, getting ready for transition planning. I didn't question it. I was glad he was bonding with our son, especially since Arthur had always been closer to me growing up. I encouraged it. That was my first mistake. Taya stopped inviting me to brunches. Our once-weekly chats about everything from garden plans to grocery stores slowly dried up. She said she was overwhelmed, that work had become demanding. And when I offered to help with anything, she'd always say the same thing: "We've got it under control." They stopped asking me to babysit the dog, something I used to do gladly when they traveled. I noticed fewer pictures of Tamil on Arthur's Facebook, less family content, more lifestyle, photos of Taya with captions like, "Building our future, one step at a time." Tamil wasn't even tagged in most of them. And then, one afternoon in November, I found Tamil whispering on the phone in the garage. When he saw me, he flinched, not out of guilt exactly, but like a child caught doing something they weren't ready to admit. He said it was business. But when I offered to bring him tea, he said no. I'd never seen him hide things from me in over 4 decades of marriage. I should have questioned it, but I didn't. After the text about Italy, I sat in a fog. I tried calling Tamil, no answer. Then Arthur, straight to voicemail. I didn't even bother with Taya. I knew her silence would be more pointed than anything she could say. I tried to tell myself this was a mistake. A trip planned quickly. A misunderstanding. Maybe they meant to include me and something happened. Maybe my phone had missed a call or a message. I checked again. Nothing. I slept in the guest room that night, not because I couldn't bear our bedroom, but because I couldn't lie in a bed meant for two when one of us had flown across the world to leave me behind. I started combing through my memory, every odd remark, every half-lie, every smile that felt brittle. And it began to form a picture I hadn't let myself see. They were shutting me out. In the days that followed, the silence was louder than anything. No Merry Christmas call. No video chat. No apology. Not even a postcard. I sat beside my untouched Christmas table, the ham growing cold on the counter, the gifts unopened beneath the tree, and I realized this wasn't just a missed holiday. This was deliberate. And I began to feel something new underneath the grief, underneath the shame and disbelief, something sharp and unrelenting. Suspicion. Something was wrong. Not just emotionally, but financially. I couldn't explain it yet, but my instincts were waking up. Tamil hadn't left his winter coat behind. His passport was gone from our filing cabinet. His suitcase, the brown one with the broken zipper, was missing from the garage. Had they planned this together? Tamil and Taya? And Arthur? Or was he led along? I didn't know, but I was going to find out. And that was before the message from the bank arrived. A week later. Just one line. Your joint accounts have been frozen due to recent changes in account ownership. Please contact the fraud department immediately. I sat down. The glass in my hand fell and shattered on the kitchen floor. I don't know what made me open the old desk drawer in Tamil's office that morning. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the lingering scent of his aftershave that still clung to the leather of his chair. Or maybe it was just desperation, clawing around in the dark, looking for something to anchor me to the life I thought I had. His desk was a small, oak thing tucked in the corner of the upstairs den. He rarely used it in the last year, or so I'd thought. But the moment I slid the top drawer open, I saw that the organization was meticulous. Not the usual mix of receipts, paper clips, and forgotten keys. No, everything here had been placed deliberately, as if someone had been using this drawer often. Privately, there was a notebook inside. His handwriting, familiar curves and slanted letters in dark blue ink. I flipped through it slowly. Dates, phone numbers, scribbled notes. But then something strange, several pages had been erased. Not torn, just scrubbed clean with correction fluid or, in some places, scratched through with such force the paper had thinned. One page had faint outlines of words that looked like a list. I held it to the light. I could barely make out some of the original handwriting underneath. Hotel near Amalfi, Arthur plus Taya, separate suite, check passport dates, salva not needed, my blood chilled. The scratch marks were like open wounds in the paper. I flipped further and found a folder, tucked beneath the notebook. Inside were 3 plane tickets, Florence, December 22nd. Business class. One for Tamil, one for Arthur, one for Taya. No 4th ticket. No mention of me. He had planned it. All of it. Not on impulse. Not because Taya begged him at the last minute. No, he had been arranging this for weeks, maybe longer. With them. Behind my back. I clutched the tickets so tightly my hands began to shake. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I couldn't. I just stood there, still as stone, while the world inside my chest cracked again. Not from surprise this time, but from betrayal that felt old, like a bruise I hadn't noticed until someone pressed on it. And suddenly, I remembered the way Taya used to speak to me over the last few months, with that syrupy voice, the way nurses speak to patients in hospice. How she tilted her head and said things like, "You sure you're up for hosting this year, Salva? You've looked so tired lately." Or how Arthur once joked at dinner, "Mom, you forgot we talked about that already, remember?" I had remembered. He was the one who'd changed the plan. But when I corrected him, He just smiled, a patronizing thing, and said, "No worries, Mom. It happens." It happened again and again. Comments about how I forgot dates, how I repeated myself, how I mixed up the names of stores or places we visited. At first, I thought they were being kind, just overly cautious, worried. But now, with Tamel's hidden plans laid out in front of me, I saw it for what it was, a foundation. They had been laying a foundation, a story, that I was declining, that I was not competent, that I was too fragile to be trusted with decisions, with money, with power. Had Tamil believed them? Had he doubted me too? Or worse, had he pretended to believe them so he wouldn't have to lie to my face? I thought about that moment 3 weeks ago when I'd asked if we were still doing Christmas at home. How he looked at me, distracted, and said, "Let's not stress this year. Maybe we'll do something quiet. Just us. Quiet. Without me." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the armchair by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on and off as the automatic timers cycled through the hours. The wind outside had picked up, and I could hear the trees brushing against the house like fingernails tapping at the glass. My thoughts kept circling back to the plane tickets, and then the bank, frozen accounts, recent changes in ownership. I hadn't approved anything. I hadn't signed anything. But then again, how easy would it be to call the bank and say, "My wife's not well. We need to secure the finances." A subtle suggestion here, a whispered concern there. If Taya and Arthur had convinced Tamil or pressured him, they could have built an entire narrative that I was forgetful, that I was mismanaging money, that I was not safe to leave in charge. And if that narrative had been in place, maybe they were already moving to take control of everything. Not just bank accounts, but assets. The house, the trust, my investments, everything I had helped build and protect over decades. I felt my face burn, not from grief, but from fury. Not wild rage. No, this was quieter. Focused. Cold. Like the moment right before a storm rolls in and the sky turns a sickly gray and everything goes silent. They thought I would crumble, that I'd cry into my pillow, make some emotional phone calls, and then fade quietly into the background like a woman too tired to fight. But I wasn't tired. I was ready. The next morning, I got up before sunrise. I made my tea, showered, and dressed in my navy blouse and trousers, the ones I used to wear to meetings back when I ran the local fundraiser board. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't seen in years. Not just a wife, not just a mother, but a woman who remembered exactly what she was capable of. I gathered everything, the notebook, the plane tickets, even the bank's notification printout I had requested online. I put it in a large brown envelope. And then I picked up the phone and dialed someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 years. "Rebecca," I said when she answered. "It's Salva. I need to talk. It's about Tamil and my accounts. And I need a lawyer." Rebecca was Tamil's old financial advisor before he moved everything to Arthur's firm 2 years ago. She was sharp, meticulous, and most importantly, loyal to truth, not people. There was a pause, and then her voice softened. "I was wondering when you'd call." By the time I arrived at Rebecca Lansing's office the next morning, I had already rehearsed what I wanted to say, how I would stay calm and focused, how I wouldn't let my voice tremble or my hands shake. But the moment she opened the glass door and gave me that look, the kind reserved for someone who's about to hear something they were never meant to know, all my preparation vanished. "Salva," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. "Come in. I made some coffee. It's strong, you'll need it." Her office was in a small converted Victorian house off the main road, warm and quiet, nothing like the sterile firm my husband and Arthur had switched to 2 years ago. There were no glass conference rooms here, no loud secretaries clicking their way down polished floors. Just a wool rug, a ticking wall clock, and a woman I used to trust with every detail of our finances. I sat on the edge of the couch while she poured the coffee. "I'm sorry I haven't kept in touch," I said, clutching the brown envelope on my lap. "After Tamil switched everything over to Arthur's group, I just assumed you. You assumed you didn't need me," she said, her tone kind, not accusing. "That's what he wanted you to think." I looked at her. She sat across from me, a folder already open in her lap. You were right to call, she said. Let's talk about what's yours, what's still in your name, and what they've been trying to move behind your back. I nodded, heart pounding. She handed me a printout of assets, spreadsheets, account titles, property deeds. It was more overwhelming than I expected. She guided me through it, line by line. Some of it I already knew. The house was purchased in my name and Tamel's, but after a refinancing we did 20 years ago, I'd ended up being the primary title holder because Tamel's credit was tied up in his construction business at the time. I'd forgotten that part. He hadn't. Then came the investments, mutual funds, index portfolios, a handful of blue chip stocks we'd started building in the early 90s when things were tight. Most were structured under our joint names, but the source of the initial capital? My inheritance from my mother. That means, unless explicitly restructured, Rebecca said, tapping the column with a pen, this is still your property legally. Even in a joint title, if the source is from one spouse's separate funds and there was no formal conversion, it's contestable. I blinked at the total line. 72% of the total holdings. In my name, my inheritance. My salary from the years I taught. Even the house, technically majority mine. Rebecca looked at me carefully. That's the good news. My voice came out hoarse. And the bad? She paused, then opened a second folder. About 4 months ago, your husband requested a private consultation with my former partner. Said he needed guidance on shifting certain assets into a living trust, with your son named as successor trustee. What kind of trust? One designed to become irrevocable in the event of mental incapacity. I stared at her, unable to breathe. Rebecca's voice grew firmer. He asked very specific questions about how to initiate a transfer without your consent, citing, and I quote, growing concerns about Salva's memory. He said you were starting to forget details, repeating conversations, and that he wanted to protect you from becoming a danger to yourself. I said nothing. He was building a case. Piece by piece, gathering evidence, real or fabricated, to make it look like I was the liability. Rebecca leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. He didn't file anything formally. No legal action. But based on what you're telling me, the bank accounts, the frozen assets, the trip without you, I think they were about to escalate. I felt dizzy. The words blurred together. Did he mention a doctor? I asked finally. Or tests. She hesitated, only vaguely. Said he was considering a consultation, that he was tracking incidents in case he needed to demonstrate a pattern. Tracking. He said you'd forgotten where your car was parked 3 times in 1 month, that you got lost going to the same store you've always gone to. I felt sick. I remembered that week. One of those times I had taken a new route because of road construction. Another time, I'd gone to the wrong level of the parking garage. But normal moments, minor lapses, and he was turning them into symptoms. Rebecca, I whispered. Could they really do this? Could they claim I'm not fit to manage my own finances? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, not easily. But if they had a doctor sign off, if they'd gathered enough proof, and if you didn't have someone like me standing in your corner, yes, they might have pulled it off. I sat back, the weight of everything crushing down on me. My husband, my son, planning not just to exclude me, but to take control of my life. Piece by piece, decision by decision. I can't believe this, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I realized that I could believe it. I'd seen it happening for months. I just didn't want to admit it. Rebecca stood and walked over to her filing cabinet. I'm going to help you, Salva, she said, retrieving a form and sliding it across the coffee table. We're going to file a legal notice with all institutions where you're named. We'll flag your accounts, set alerts, and then we're going to create a protective trust in your name with your chosen successor. I don't know who to pick, I said quietly. I don't trust anyone anymore. She gave me a faint smile. We'll figure it out. For now, the point is to stop any more movement. You'll stay in control, and I'll make sure no one touches a cent without your explicit, documented approval. I signed the form. My hand was steady. It was the first time in weeks, maybe months, that I'd felt a sense of power return to me. Not revenge. Not yet. Just the quiet satisfaction of pushing back, of drawing a line, of saying, "You don't get to erase me." That evening, I stood in the living room, staring at the empty space under the Christmas tree. The gifts I'd bought were still wrapped. The ribbon on Arthur's was slightly crumpled from where I'd smoothed it again and again, waiting for a call, for a message, for a lie I could almost believe. But now I knew the truth. They weren't just gone for the holidays. They were trying to make sure I didn't come back. Or worse, that I stayed but became invisible. They underestimated me, all of them. The next 48 hours moved fast. Faster than I thought a woman like me, 67, betrayed, bruised but breathing, could move. But once the fog of disbelief had lifted, once I understood just how far Tamil and Taya and even Arthur had gone, I stopped moving slowly. I became someone they hadn't seen in years. Maybe never. The woman who knew how to balance 3 jobs in her 20s. Who raised a child while helping her husband build a business from nothing. Who taught night classes and still came home to cook dinner, fold laundry, and pay every bill on time without ever missing a decimal. That woman had never left. She had simply been quiet. And now she was awake. By 8 the next morning, I was on the phone with Rebecca again. "I want everything locked down," I told her. My voice was calm, but not soft. Every account, every signature authority, everything he could possibly touch. I want my name and only my name on it. Rebecca didn't ask questions. She gave me an address, a list, and a contact at a private wealth management firm she trusted. "Bring your documents. We'll move everything." Today, by noon, we had reissued all primary accounts under my name only, closed all joint accounts that weren't legally required to remain open, including 2 Arthur didn't even know I was aware of. Transferred my investment portfolio to a private custodial account with multi-level authentication. Tamil's access was completely revoked. Changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance policies. Reassigned a successor for my pension disbursements to a third-party fiduciary with clear limitations on any family access. It was like surgery. Clean, deliberate, final. By the time I signed the last document, I looked up and realized I hadn't taken a deep breath in hours. When I finally did, it felt like air I hadn't tasted in months. Freedom isn't a feeling you recognize right away. At first, it's just the absence of dread. Rebecca watched me carefully as I gathered my things. "You're sure about this?" she asked. "I'm beyond sure," I said. They don't get to play pretend. They don't get to test the waters and then act surprised when they drown. She didn't smile, but she nodded. On my way out, I called the bank. There was one account I hadn't touched yet, the small one Tamil used for personal spending. Grocery trips. Gas. The kind of account that had maybe a few $100s in it at any given time. "I want to make sure it stays open," I said to the teller. "But I'm removing all automatic transfers. No deposits from the main pool. No overdraft protection. No line of credit." The woman on the line hesitated. "Are you sure?" "He's been listed as primary on not anymore," I said. "Check the system." "I just left the manager's office." She did. And when she came back on the line, her voice had changed. "Yes, Mrs. Vasquez. It's been updated." I hung up, let him swipe his card at a cafe in Florence, and watch the transaction decline. Let him explain that to Taya over espresso. I got home just as the sun was beginning to dip behind the trees, casting long, winter shadows across the hallway tiles. I kicked off my shoes and sat at the kitchen table, hands still steady, heart oddly quiet. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. I pulled out the folder I'd brought home full of copies, confirmations, signature pages, legal armor. And right on top of the stack was a flagged transaction summary Rebecca had printed as a courtesy. Just a handful of highlighted movements from the last 60 days, things she thought I should look into. The one that caught my eye was dated 6 weeks ago. A wire transfer from one of our joint savings accounts to a private auto dealer. Amount, $20,000. Recipient, Arthur Vasquez. Memo, vehicle purchase. Gift. I stared at it. Just stared. I hadn't authorized it. I hadn't even known about it. $20,000. Gone. Gifted to my son like a birthday card with no return address. No one had mentioned it. No one had thanked me, not even as a formality. I tried to remember if Arthur had even said anything unusual lately. If he had stopped by, he hadn't. Taya had come alone the last time to borrow a cookbook. She'd walked around my kitchen like it was already hers, tapping the counter, sighing over the outdated stove. And now I knew why she felt so comfortable. They didn't just want to exclude me. They wanted to spend me. Spend my name, my savings, my trust, my marriage, like it was owed to them. That night, I didn't eat. I just sat at the table, staring at that line in the transaction summary like it might start speaking. Like it might tell me why. Not the logistics. The why my son, the boy I'd raised, who used to crawl into bed with me when he had nightmares, who cried when I dropped him off for his first day of school, had looked me in the eyes and lied for months, had stood silently by while his wife wove a fantasy about my confusion, had taken my money, bought a car, and driven it straight into the future he was planning without me, and never once thought I deserved to know. The pain didn't even hurt anymore. It was done hurting, it was done pleading. Now it was still, clean and quiet. I folded the statement and placed it in an envelope marked evidence. It would join the plane tickets. The notebook the bank message a case was forming. They wanted me erased, but they'd forgotten one thing: I still had a pen. The call came just after 10 in the morning, 2 days after I closed the accounts. I was in the living room, halfway through removing the Christmas decorations, carefully wrapping each ornament, not in sadness, but in something closer to clarity. A kind of emotional filing. This belonged to the woman who waited. Now it belongs to the woman who knows. The phone rang, Tamel's name flashing across the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But no, I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to hear the confusion, the panic, the realization that I had not, in fact, faded into the background like he'd hoped. Salva? His voice was clipped, irritated, not the soft, tired murmur of the man I'd known for 41 years. This voice belonged to someone who believed he'd been inconvenienced. Yes, I answered, steady. What is this? I just tried to transfer money for the hotel deposit and my card was declined. That sounds frustrating, I replied flatly. Have you tried your personal account? He exhaled hard, clearly not in the mood for games. Don't play coy. What did you do to the accounts? I didn't hesitate. I secured them. My accounts. The ones with my name on them. The house, the investments, the pension. All of it. A pause. You're being ridiculous, he said. We had a plan. Arthur and I were— No, I interrupted. You had a plan. I had a Christmas ham waiting in the oven while you snuck out of the country with our son and his wife, like I was a housekeeper you forgot to fire. Another pause. I didn't mean for it to seem that way. Taya booked it. Oh yes, I said. Your daughter-in-law, who apparently felt confident enough to spend $20,000 of my money on a car for Arthur without telling me. Did she also book the tickets? Write the bank transfer memo? Did she coach you through the line about me being forgetful? His silence was all the answer I needed. I continued. Tamil, you're entitled to your personal account. I left it untouched. You'll find a few $100s there. Enough to get yourself home. But the rest? You've lost access. Permanently. You can't do this without talking to me, he snapped. I just did, I replied. You lost the right to negotiation when you started planning how to strip your wife of autonomy behind her back. There was a beat of silence. Then, I want to fix this, Salva. We need to talk. No, I said. We need to stop pretending we're on the same side. Then I hung up. Later that afternoon, I sent a single message to Taya. Return the $20,000 by Friday. Or I file a formal dispute and your name gets flagged on every joint transaction since October. This is not a bluff. This is your only chance to walk away quietly. She didn't reply, but she read it. The read receipt was the only thing I needed. That night, I met with Claudia Herrera, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney Rebecca recommended, mid-50s, gray hair and a braid down her back, glasses perched halfway down her nose like she could see through the polite lies most people relied on. Her office was lined with case files, reference books, and a small quote frame on the bookshelf that read, "If you stay silent long enough, they forget you have teeth." I liked her instantly. Claudia went through everything, The accounts, the transactions, the plane tickets, the medical comments I remembered hearing in passing from Taya and Arthur, the move to isolate me from key financial decisions. She listened carefully, took notes, then sat back. Salva, she said, what they did, the manipulation, the concealment of financial transfers, the attempt to create a false narrative around your mental capacity, falls under the legal umbrella of elder financial abuse. I blinked. I'm 67, I said quietly. That doesn't feel old. You're over 60, she said firmly. The law doesn't care if you run marathons or teach philosophy. What matters is that your age was used against you, that they attempted to justify removing your control by painting you as unfit. That's the textbook definition. I looked at her. So, what can I do? She raised an eyebrow. Anything you want. The next morning, I made an appointment for a full, independent cognitive assessment. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew they were counting on me never questioning it. When the receptionist asked if it was court-mandated or self-requested, I said, voluntary. I want documentation. The kind that holds up when someone starts rewriting my story. She nodded. We'll do a full neuropsych battery. You'll have results in writing. And a second copy can be notarized. Perfect, I said. That's exactly what I need. By Thursday, Taya still hadn't responded to my message. But I wasn't waiting. The checklists were already in motion, a complaint prepared, a civil claim drafted, and a document trail that led directly to Arthur's bank account. Claudia was assembling evidence. Rebecca was flagging transactions. And I was making lists, not of presents, not of dinner guests, but of every single thing they took without asking, of every lie they thought I'd forget, of every moment they mistook silence for surrender. It was a Friday morning, gray and cold, the kind of morning where you drink your coffee slowly because there's nowhere urgent to be, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was running behind someone else's schedule. I had returned from my medical assessment the day before. The doctor, a kindly woman named Dr. Elvira Mendel, had gone through the full range of cognitive evaluations. Memory recall, problem solving, language, spatial recognition. She had smiled softly at the end, folding her hands together and saying, Salva, your mind is sharp. Very sharp. I'd requested 2 certified copies of the report. One was for Claudia. The other I planned to hand directly to my husband, if he had the nerve to show up. He didn't. But that morning, I received a new bank alert in my email. An automatic mortgage notice for a property tied to Arthur's name. I didn't remember authorizing alerts for that, but it turns out Tamil had forgotten to change some shared notification settings from our older portfolio. The subject line was cold and brief. Second notice. 37 days past due I open the file. Arthur's mortgage. Overdue. 37 days. They'd been in Italy, eating carbonara and wandering through cathedrals, while their house teetered on the edge of delinquency. They had no business taking a vacation. No business buying a car. They weren't floating, they were drowning, and they had been counting on me to hold them up like always. Only this time, the life raft had a lock on it. That night, I made a cup of peppermint tea and pulled out my old photo box, the one Tamil never looked through, the one that smelled faintly of cedar and lavender. It was filled with years I had buried under everyone else's needs, snapshots of hikes I wanted to take, destinations I once circled in old travel magazines, postcards from my younger self's imagination. Madrid, Valencia, Seville, Granada. Spain had always called to me in the quiet moments, the language, the food, the dancing in plazas at dusk. I'd always said someday, and then put it off for Christmas planning, for Arthur's college tuition, for Tamil's dental surgery. But now there were no excuses left. I booked the trip in silence. 2 weeks. A guided cultural tour. Small group. Historical sites. Flamenco classes. A tapas tasting in Barcelona. One of the options included a quiet evening in a converted monastery turned in. I chose that one. I printed the itinerary and placed it under a magnet on the fridge, right where the holiday menu used to hang. Later that weekend, I drove out to see Janet, my older sister, who I hadn't properly visited in years. We'd grown distant, not from conflict, but from the slow erosion of time and competing obligations. I'd always been too busy with Arthur's school events or hosting Tamel's business dinners. She opened the door wearing the same oversized cardigan she'd had for a decade. Her gray hair was longer than I remembered, her eyes exactly the same. "Sel," she said, startled. "Is everything?" I stepped forward and hugged her. Her arms wrapped around me like home. We spent the day on her back porch, wrapped in blankets, sipping wine and talking like we used to about nonsense, about music, about our parents. I told her what had happened, not every brutal detail, but enough. She didn't interrupt. Didn't say, "I always had a feeling." Just listened. At one point, she looked at me and said, "What are you going to do next?" And I smiled. "I'm going to Spain." She blinked. "Wait. You?" "Me." And then I laughed, really laughed, until we both were doubled over, tears streaming down our faces at the absurdity of what freedom sometimes looks like at 67. The confrontation happened the following Wednesday. Arthur and Taya were back. I knew before they said anything because I saw the car in the driveway, the new one. The one I hadn't approved. The same one now in danger of being repossessed. They knocked on the front door like visitors. I opened it and didn't invite them in. "Hi, Mom," Arthur said, adjusting his coat. "We thought we should talk." "I bet you did," I said. Taya looked uneasy. Her face was bare, no makeup, no bravado. "I'll be quick," I said, stepping onto the porch so they wouldn't cross the threshold. "I'm not angry anymore, but I am done. The accounts are restructured. The deed is in my name alone. Your father's access has been rescinded. The car funds, you have until the end of this week to return them. If you can't, my lawyer will begin a formal claim, and the credit fraud unit will be notified. Your names are on the wire." Arthur's face paled. "I thought we were family," he said low. "No," I replied calmly. "You thought I was obligated, but I'm not. Not anymore." Taya opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "And one more thing." I pulled a sealed envelope from my coat pocket and handed it to Arthur. "This is from an independent neuropsychologist. Certified. It confirms my cognitive health in full. So if either of you ever again suggest I'm forgetful or unfit, you better be ready to make that claim in court." Taya looked away. Arthur was silent. I let the quiet linger until it became unbearable. "You planned your vacation for months," I said. "You excluded me deliberately. You tested what would happen if you pushed me to the margins. Now I'm here to give you the answer." "What's that?" Arthur asked, voice flat. "I'm not on the margins," I said. "I'm at the center. My center. And from now on, I set the terms." Then I turned and went inside, closing the door gently behind me. They came back early. I knew they would. When I heard the car in the driveway the following Monday afternoon, I didn't move from the armchair. I kept sipping my tea, Earl Grey with lemon, the kind Tamil used to bring me in bed on slow Sunday mornings, back when things were still tender between us. Now it tasted like punctuation, like a full stop. I heard the car door slam, then another, then the sound of a key scratching at the lock that no longer worked. I'd had the house rekeyed 3 days ago. The front door didn't open. They knocked not politely, but urgently. I waited 5 seconds, then walked slowly to the entry and opened it just wide enough for their faces to fill the frame. Arthur looked like he hadn't slept. Tamel's coat was wrinkled. Taya's sunglasses were still on, even though it was nearly dusk. "What happened to the locks?" Tamel barked. "I had them changed," I said simply. "You can't do that without I did." He looked stunned. Arthur opened his mouth, but I raised my hand to stop him. "If you want to talk, you come in and you sit. All of you. And no one interrupts me until I finish." None of them answered, but they stepped inside. I watched each of them as they walked to the living room, like guests unsure of whether they'd been invited or summoned. The room was clean, quiet. The Christmas decorations were gone. In their place, a single folder on the coffee table, neatly labeled. They sat, and I did not. I stood with my back to the fireplace, looking down at the three of them, my husband, my son, and the woman who called herself part of our family, yet treated me like a placeholder. "I know about the trust," I began. "The one you tried to set up without me." The one where Arthur was to take over in case I was suddenly declared incompetent. Tamil shifted in his seat, but didn't respond. I continued. I know about the inquiries into transferring assets without my knowledge. I know about the calls you made to the bank, the notes you left out of your planner, the tickets booked months in advance. Arthur cleared his throat. Mom, it's not what you don't, I said sharply. Not yet. I turned to Tamil. You used my inheritance. You tried to move my half of our life without so much as a conversation. You told people I was forgetful, that I was tired, that I wasn't up for the responsibility. I was trying to protect you, he said. By erasing me? I asked. By making financial moves behind my back? By flying to Italy and leaving me here like the dog you forgot to put in the kennel? Taya exhaled through her nose, a soft, sarcastic breath. Something to say? I asked her, turning. I'd love to hear it, since you've been the one pulling strings while pretending to be overwhelmed by work. She folded her arms. You're twisting this. No, I said. I'm finally telling it the way it is. Then I turned to Arthur. You took $20,000 from our joint account 6 weeks ago. For a car. Tell me how you got that money. Who authorized it? Arthur looked down. I'm waiting. Taya said Dad approved it, he mumbled. She said the money was just sitting there and we'd pay it back later. She said. I repeated the words slowly. Then I looked at Tamil. Did you approve it? He hesitated, then nodded. I didn't think it would be a big deal. I was going to transfer it back when we sorted out the accounts. You mean when you transferred them away from me, I corrected. Taya let out a small laugh. You act like we robbed you. You did, I said. You robbed me of trust, of dignity, of place. Do you know what it feels like to sit in a house waiting for a Christmas call that never comes? While you post smiling photos from Florence and tell strangers how grateful you are for true family. No one answered. So I continued. I wasn't sick. I wasn't confused. I was inconvenient. I was someone you couldn't control, so you tried to exclude me. You whispered things about my memory, made jokes about me repeating stories, and he used that to justify shutting me out. Taya finally spoke, her voice brittle. You've always had a way of inserting yourself into everything, Salva. The holidays, the house, Arthur's decisions. We just wanted space. We thought. Maybe if you didn't know everything for once, you'd finally get the message. Arthur looked at her like she'd said too much. But it was already out. The air in the room changed. You lied to me, I said. We didn't lie, Arthur said quickly. We didn't tell you. That's a lie by omission, I snapped. And don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. I didn't think you'd let us go, Taya muttered. I stepped forward. You're right. I wouldn't have let you go without me. Not because I want to control your trip, but because I believed I was still part of this family. Because I thought I mattered. You didn't tell me because you knew I'd expect honesty. You wanted to disappear quietly and hope I didn't notice. And you did notice, Tamil said bitterly. I noticed everything, I said. And for the first time, I didn't brush it off. I didn't wait for you to apologize. I did what you least expected. You fought back, Arthur said. I nodded. I fought back. Then I picked up the folder from the table and set it in front of them. It's all in there. The account closures, the reassignment of beneficiaries, the legal certification of my cognitive abilities, the timeline of your trip planning matched against financial activity. My lawyer has a copy. So does the bank. Taya opened her mouth again, but I didn't let her speak. You don't get to set the rules anymore, I said. You don't get to define family and then rewrite the story to fit your comfort. If you want to be part of my life, you come with honesty, respect, and transparency. Otherwise, you get exactly what you gave me, silence. I walked toward the door, opened it wide, and waited. Arthur stood slowly. He looked conflicted, like a boy who'd broken something he couldn't glue back together. Mom, we didn't know it would go this far. You just hoped I wouldn't find out. He didn't argue. They left quietly, and when the door closed, I stood in the center of my home, not broken, not bitter. Just free. The next morning was cold, still, and wonderfully quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, sunlight slipping across the floor in long, golden strips. No voices. No tension. Just the soft sound of birds somewhere beyond the back fence, and the steady rhythm of my breath as I turned over the folded note cards in my hands, three of them, neatly written, each addressed with a name. Arthur Tameltea. I wasn't interested in theatrics. I didn't need raised voices, declarations, or drawn out confrontations. I'd done that. I'd said everything I needed to say. Now it was time for terms. Because the truth was, if they wanted access to me, to my love, to my presence, to my time, they'd have to meet me on my terms. Not the terms of a woman who waited quietly. Not the terms of a woman who funded every birthday and bit her tongue when her name was missing from the toast. Not the terms of someone who was expected to give and give and give without ever receiving honesty in return. They wanted conditions? So did I. They arrived that afternoon. Taya first, sharp-heeled and silent, arms crossed. Arthur behind her, sheepish. Tamil came last, shoulders hunched as if he were walking into an audit. Maybe he was. We sat in the living room again. I did not offer coffee. I placed the note cards on the table between us. They stared at them like they might explode. These are the conditions, I said. There is no negotiation. These are not threats. These are boundaries. Clear, fair, and long overdue. I looked at Arthur first. You have 7 days to return the $20,000. I don't care how. Sell the car. Take out a loan. That money came from my account without consent. It will be returned. In full. Or legal proceedings begin. This is non-negotiable. He nodded once. Silent. Pale. I turned to Tamil. You have 1 week to decide what this marriage means to you. I am not interested in apologies. I am not interested in explanations about how things got out of hand. Either you want to repair this, with counseling, with full transparency, or we move to separation. I will not chase you. I will not beg you to pick me again. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. No, you've had your say. Now I'm having mine. Lastly, I turned to Taya. There will be no more financial support. From this moment forward, you will receive nothing from me, not a cent, not a favor, not a temporary transfer or a small family gift. Nothing. If you ever speak to me again, it will be as one adult to another. Not as a daughter-in-law scowling behind a smile, waiting for me to disappear. Taya flinched. Just barely. But it was there. I leaned forward slightly. And I will no longer be the family purse, the family babysitter, the backup plan, or the emotional wallpaper you've all used to make yourselves feel important. I will not be a convenient backdrop to your curated life. The room was still no one moved. No one argued because they knew. Deep down, they knew I had every right. They had taken my generosity for granted, turned my presence into a prop, written me out of the family script and assumed I would still clap from the audience. But I was done clapping. And I was done standing behind them while they took center stage. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I'm awake now. And I've decided to live for myself. I stood, they didn't. Now please leave, I said softly. There's nothing more to discuss. They left quietly, one by one. Taya first, eyes blazing. Arthur behind her, broken in a way I didn't find satisfying, just necessary. Tamil lingered at the door, searching my face for something. Maybe the softness that used to live there. Maybe the part of me that waited up for him with tea and gentle understanding. I gave him neither. 7 days, I said simply. And then I shut the door. The house was still. Beautifully still. I stood in the living room, my reflection faint in the window glass, hair silver and swept back, face lined but clear-eyed. I looked older, yes, but I also looked free. I picked up the folder from the table, the one with my travel documents and itinerary. Spain was booked. Paid in full. A seat with my name on it, on a flight that was taking me somewhere no one else had chosen for me. The choice was mine. Finally, I walked into the bedroom and opened the closet. Not to hang up their shame, but to pack my future. The 7th day passed without a word. No knock at the door. No letter. No message sliding into my inbox at midnight. No dramatic appearance on the porch with tired eyes and an apology long rehearsed. Tamil stayed silent. The man who once couldn't go to sleep without touching my shoulder, who used to ask me if I wanted to grow old by the sea or the mountains, that man had become a quiet stranger, holed up in his son's guest room, waiting, I suppose, for me to blink first. But I didn't. Instead, I took the folder marked Final Documents from my desk drawer, smoothed the pages with both hands, and signed the divorce petition with a pen I hadn't used in years. The same one we'd used to sign our first mortgage. A small act of symmetry. I didn't cry. Claudia filed it the next morning. Tamil was served by certified courier, delivered to Arthur's address, because he still hadn't dared show his face. The court process was swift. Thanks to the careful preparation we'd done over the last few weeks, and the fact that 70% of our combined assets were demonstrably mine, by title, by inheritance, by historical record, there was very little for him to contest. No children to split custody over. No jointly owned business, no financial entanglement they could twist into dependency. He didn't fight. Not even a single response letter. I don't think he expected me to go through with it. And by the time he realized I had, it was too late to stop the machine I'd already set in motion. Arthur let him stay at the house for a while. That much I heard through Janet, who still had a way of finding things out without even trying. She said Tamil had been sleeping in the spare room, walking around the house like a ghost, bumping into things in the dark. But that didn't last long. Barely 2 weeks passed before Taya started complaining loudly and not in private. He never helps with anything. He just sits around. I'm not cleaning up after your father. And just like that, the temporary hospitality wore out. Janet said Tamil was staying in some extended stay rental by the highway now, nothing special, just a kitchenette and a television he never turned on. Funny. All that planning to remove me from the center of his life, only to find himself removed from everyone else's. The $20,000, of course, was never returned. Arthur sent one payment, a symbolic $1,000, just enough to delay me, to show effort without commitment. Then, nothing, no follow-up, no explanation. He ignored the deadline I'd set, then the second one, then the third. So I did what I said I would. I handed it over to a collections agency. They were swift, ruthless, professional. Arthur received the notice on a Tuesday. I know because Taya messaged me that same evening. The message was long, apologetic, carefully written. I know things went too far. I was scared. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. I never wanted to hurt you. Maybe we could meet for coffee and talk, just us. I read it once, then again. I thought about all the times I'd invited her to lunch, and she'd canceled last minute. All the birthday cards I signed with care, and the gifts I never received in return. All the lies told with a smile, and that one message on Christmas Eve, the one that gutted me, the one that started it all. Only those who truly feel like family. And now she wanted coffee, now that the money was gone, now that the man she built her scheme with was sleeping in a hotel off the freeway. Now that I was the one with control. I didn't respond, I didn't block her either. Let the silence explain itself. Later that week, I went through old photo albums, not to cry, not to mourn, but to remind myself of everything I'd built. There were pictures of Arthur as a boy, his face round and sweet, before ambition clouded it. Pictures of Tamil smiling at the lake, 25 years younger, before he started thinking of me as a roadblock to his second act. Pictures of me always holding someone, always making space. And now I was in the frame alone, and I didn't mind it. I packed a small suitcase and placed it near the door. Spain was only days away. 2 weeks alone, by design. A tour, yes, but not the kind where you follow someone else's steps. This one was flexible. Optional routes. Days to yourself. Decisions left to you. I booked a room with a view of the sea. When I told Janet, she smiled. It suits you, she said. You've always taken care of everyone else. Maybe it's time to take care of your own story. And so the house was still. The rooms were clean, the future was open. And for the first time in decades, there were no hands in my pockets, no eyes watching me through windows, no voices asking what I could do for them. I poured a glass of wine, opened the sliding door, and stepped into the last light of the evening. The porch was mine, the silence was mine. The peace was mine, and I owed it to no one. Spain was everything I had hoped for and nothing I could have predicted. The flight was long, but quiet, no one to ask me where their charger was or to wrinkle their nose at my choice of a light movie. I sat by the window, watched the sky change, and let the sensation of crossing an ocean alone fill me with something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not doubt, but possibility. The days that followed were a slow unfolding, like petals opening in sunlight after years spent under a glass dome. I walked the narrow streets of Toledo, touched walls older than the country I came from, tasted olives so fresh they made me dizzy. I sat with a woman from Norway named Ingrid who had retired early and never looked back. I danced at a flamenco bar in Seville where no one knew my name, and it didn't matter because they looked at me and smiled like I belonged anyway. I stayed up late reading by the window in my room, the Mediterranean just beyond the glass, a quiet breathing presence that felt more like company than solitude. I took pictures of doorways and shadows and strangers laughing. I ate when I was hungry. I slept when I was tired. I made no one's coffee but my own. And for once, it was enough. Months passed, I extended the trip twice, once out of curiosity, the second time out of peace. I rented a small apartment near a quiet plaza in Valencia, just above a bookstore. I began to journal again. Nothing dramatic, just observations, reflections. Who am I now that no one needs me to carry them? That question had once terrified me. Now, it freed me. The call came one afternoon as I was watering the potted herbs on my tiny balcony. I saw Arthur's name on the screen and let it ring twice before answering. Mom? His voice was different, thinner, unsure. Hello, Arthur. I didn't know if you'd pick up. I almost didn't. There was a long pause. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For what we did. For what I let happen. For letting her. He stopped. I don't even know how to explain it anymore. Don't, I said quietly. Some things aren't explainable. They're just choices. Another pause. She left, he said. Taya, we're getting divorced. I waited. Not out of cruelty, just patience. The kind of patience you learn after spending your whole life giving and never asking. I should have stopped it, he said. All of it. I let you down. You did, I said, evenly. You chose comfort. You let her speak for you. You watched me be pushed out and you said nothing. He didn't argue, I want to fix it, he said eventually. I looked out over the balcony. The breeze smelled of salt and sun. I felt no urge to cry. You can't fix what you broke by coming back to the same old roles, I said. You can't apologize just to make room for the old patterns to return. I know. I am not your backup plan, Arthur. I'm not your insurance policy. And I will not go back to being the person who patches up what you won't take responsibility for. I get that, he said. I really do. I just hope maybe we can start over. Slowly. That's up to you, I said. Not me. I came home 3 weeks later. Not because I was finished with Spain, but because I was ready to begin again on my own ground. Janet met me at the airport with flowers and a grin that made me laugh out loud. She said, "You look 10 years younger," and for once, I believed her. The house welcomed me, quiet and waiting. I didn't feel lonely walking through it. I felt in possession. Not of the property, of myself. I hung the framed photo from Valencia above the fireplace, a shadow of 2 women laughing by a stone fountain. I wasn't even in it, but it reminded me of who I had become. I restructured my calendar, time for painting, walks, book club, dinners with friends who listened without needing anything. I updated my will. I created a charitable trust in my name. I donated my old kitchen table to a shelter for women escaping abuse. And one afternoon, I removed every trace of shared passwords from my accounts and sat back with a glass of cold white wine. There was no one left to explain myself to. Arthur called again, more cautiously this time. He said he'd started therapy. He said he understood now that respect doesn't come from being forgiven, it comes from change. I told him I was open to seeing who he became, not who he said he would be. As for Tamil, he didn't return. Not really. He called once to ask about a photo album. I told him it had already been packed and sent. It felt like closing a chapter without slamming the book. Taya never contacted me again. The silence suited us both. My life now is not a dramatic rebirth. It is something quieter. It is a woman waking each morning and knowing she owes nothing she does not freely give. It is a home filled only with things I choose to keep. It is a name not erased from the list, but written at the top. For years, I was the backdrop. Now I am the scene and I didn't need a stage to perform on. Just a seat at my own table.